Hello, hello. Welcome to the third episode of the Miller Sports Podcast. Coming at you live here in Phoenix. I am your host, Franklin Miller, part of Burn City Sports. And today we're going to be talking about the Phoenix Suns last road trip, which was a really, really tough one, to say the least. But we're just going to get through it, so bear with me. And the upcoming home stretch and how valuable Devin Booker being out has been, or not valuable that he's been out, but just how valuable Devin Booker is to this team now that he's been out with a left groin strain. But first, before I start, I just wanted to apologize. I've been away over the past week, holiday season. I went back home to California to catch up with some family. So I didn't get a chance to recap a few games that has happened, but a lot has happened in Phoenix, and majority of it is not good. But we can just go around and just kind of recap together of what happened this past week and during the holidays. So I just want to just get that started. But first things first, the road trip was really tough. Starting on Christmas, it started with Devin Booker getting injured in like the first 4 minutes of that game against the Denver Nuggets, where he went down with a left groin injury. And before that, he was out already 3 games with a left groin injury that he suffered after his 58-point performance against the New Orleans Pelicans. And I mean, it's been kind of tough with him out of the lineup, to say the least. It's been one of those situations where you need your star player back and needing him to just fill the void during stretches like these with the West so close. It wasn't that long ago that they were the number fourth seed when he went down, and now after this road trip, they're at the 8th spot, looking as a play-in team right now, with the Warriors kind of lurking in right behind them, tied at 20 and 19. So it's been tough, to say the least. But a couple of things that have taken note from the road trip, and we'll start with the positives, is the bench actually, for the most part, I thought have played pretty well. I thought they're getting valuable playing time with a lot of starters been in and out of the lineup. And more importantly, I think Dwayne Washington Jr. has stepped up. I know he had that 26-point performance against the Memphis Grizzlies, and that was a huge win for the Suns to get them kind of in a flow before the last 4 games that they've lost. But that was a huge stepping stone for Dwayne Washington, because they're going to need him during this down stretch of the season, even when everybody's back, because I believe he's a valuable asset to this team. I believe that he's been one of the bright spots on the bench for this team amidst um, the struggling road trip and just stretch overall. And another thing too is there's been a lot of talk about how people think that he deserves to get a little bit more consistent playing time, and I would argue that you can make a valuable case for that. That Dwayne Washington deserves valuable playing time. I mean, over the course stretch, he's been averaging over 10 points a game, been shooting the ball relatively well, a little less than 40%, but he's been one of the best volume shooters on this team. I think that you can work a lot with him in the pick and roll action with DeAndre Ayton and Jock Landale and Bismack Biyombo. And I think that one thing that Monty Williams alluded to during that time was how much, like, in the beginning of the season, where it was kind of a tough stretch when he first got acquainted from the Indiana Pacers, and how that Monty Williams just wanted him to kind of be himself while running the offense. I feel like he was trying to do a little too much of what the coaches were asking him to do and trying to be a robot out there to begin the season, along with the injuries that he was dealing with. And as soon as Monty and him had that talk, I feel like he's taking another step in his game. So with a little bit more consistency, I can see him getting a little bit more playing time off the bench and being a valuable asset down the stretch run of this season. Um, Now let's get to like the negatives, so to speak, of this road trip. I feel like the Suns, when it came to these losses, I would say 3 out of the 5 of their road losses were really close games. Like the game yesterday against Cleveland was close; they only lost by 2. The game against Toronto, I feel like they had a chance, and then it kind of got away from them. Um, down the stretch. I feel like the game against the Wizards was close in the end of the third quarter, and then that got away from them early in the fourth. And then obviously the Denver Nuggets game was back and forth. And I feel like that was one of the best games of the season, one of the Suns' best outings of the season, despite all the injuries. But I think that one of the things is when it comes to all those losses, they all happen in different ways. We can look back to yesterday's game. They shot 39% from the floor, 35% from three. It just was not a great shooting night, and they played tremendous defense. They held Donovan Mitchell to 3 of 12 shooting from three, with only getting 20 points, and that's after he dropped 71 points against the Chicago Bulls with 11 assists. I thought they did a terrific job defending um, the baseline well. I thought they did a good job defending back doors. I thought they got around screens really well. I thought Landry Shamet defended his tail off. I thought Chris Paul defended his tail off. And as a whole, I thought they just did a phenomenal job of just slowing down Cleveland, but they just couldn't score. Like they just were going back and forth with them in regards of like just scoring, matching point for point. I also thought that the Cameron Payne injury that happened in that game really affected the way Chris Paul played down the stretch. I felt like a little fatigue got to him. He played 40 minutes, especially for a guy that's 37, 38 years old. I think that that can wear and tear with him. And I thought he played a phenomenal game, scoring 25. I just think that down the stretch, he just didn't get a lot of help. And what it really came down to in that game was whichever team's offense was able to generate consistent play down the stretch in terms of turn the ball over the least, and just outright scoring. I thought Phoenix just didn't score as many points down the stretch as they could have. They missed a lot of layups. They missed a lot of mid-range shots. I thought that Monty Williams did a good job of game planning and like just providing the right providing the right play call, excuse me, in terms of like drawing up a game-winning shot for Mikal Bridges. It just didn't fall. You can argue that you might have wanted to go to Chris Paul in that regard, but I like the idea of what they did on that play. It just didn't go in. That happens, but with that game, it came down to just shooting and scoring the ball, and they usually do that really well. And yesterday was just not that for Phoenix, even with the injuries. And also, we go to the Toronto game. I thought they shot the ball exceptionally well. They shot 42% from three. They shot over 50% for the game. I think Ish Wainwright had 4 steals that game. He had 3 threes, scored 9 points. Chris Paul was phenomenal. I thought Mikal Bridges played pretty well. I thought everybody shot the ball relatively well in that game. The only problem was they had 27 turnovers. That was the worst outing I've ever seen in sloppy play from a Phoenix Suns team in the Monty Williams era. Was that Toronto Raptors game in terms of just turning the ball over, just not getting great production on the floor on offense. I thought Damian Lee had one of his worst games of the season that day with five turnovers himself. Dwayne Washington was turning the ball over left and right. It was just one of those crazy outings of just not taking care of the ball. And on top of it, DeAndre Ayton had his worst outing of the season with 4 points on 2 of 10 shooting, as Toronto Raptors did a great job of just double teaming him and just forcing him to pass out. And he did a decent job, and actually a great job of that when he was at the University of Arizona. But when it came to that game, he was just struggling just to find the right matchups, the right looks. And it in a way, that wasn't just the only reason that cost them, but it was a big turning event in terms of like what happened, of how they lost that game. Because even with all those turnovers, the Suns were right there for the taking to win that game. Gary Trent Jr. had a phenomenal game that game, scoring 35 points and making like 7 threes, if I'm not mistaken, shooting over 50%. So it was tough slowing him down. Pascal Siakam dropped 26 in that game, but I feel like that was a game that got away from the Suns late in the fourth quarter. But those turnovers throughout the course of the game just kept Toronto in it, and it ended up costing them at the end. I thought the game against Washington, even though they lost the game 127-102, it was close up until the middle portion of the fourth quarter. And the key thing, or actually not even the middle portion of the fourth quarter, the late third quarter, early fourth quarter. And what happened in Toronto was a staple of first what happened in Washington. And that's when they just kept turning the ball over late. And it was 83-82. And all of a sudden, Dwayne Washington started turning the ball over. Damian Lee turned the ball over. DeAndre Ayton, Kane comes in the game. He turns the ball over. Everybody from a physicality standpoint played well. The effort was there. It's just the turnovers really cost them. And it's one of those stretches where it's kind of just the things that you need really selective plays that can just solidify a team where you're just not turning the ball over like you are. And I feel like the Suns just time after time in this road trip just turn the ball over in a way that they're not really accustomed used to. They're first in turnover to assist ratio, so they do a good job of controlling the tempo of the game, getting to the right spots, making the right passes. But I feel like sometimes them passing the ball a little too much, sometimes them throwing the ball in traffic when they cut or when they drive inside is causing them to turn the ball over. And I feel like if a lot of those shots are just made to just try to draw fouls as opposed to making that extra pass, I feel like their offense can make a make a turn. And speaking of fouls, that's what happened in the loss against the New York Knicks. They only shot 7 free throws. So there's another reason how they lose that game. They didn't shoot the ball well. That was their worst three-point shooting game of the road trip, shooting 20, if I'm not mistaken, 27% from three, but they only shot 7 free throws with the Knicks shooting 25 of them. And if I'm not mistaken, Julius Randle, who had a phenomenal game scoring 28 points, 16 rebounds, he had like 15 of those free throws. And it's been a constant theme with the Suns all season where you have a team out shooting the Suns at the free throw line night in and night out. And I don't know whether that's just a lack of physicality, a lack of driving to the basket, the refs being ticky tacky with foul calls, or all of the above. But the Suns got to find a way to get to the foul line. And I keep saying this over and over and over again. But until the Suns can find a way to win the free throw battle during this stretch run, it's going to be tough for them to beat these teams in the West. And I know the West isn't as strong as it has been in years past. When you have teams that they've struggled against, like the Dallas Mavericks coming to town later this month, when you have teams like the Denver Nuggets and the Memphis Grizzlies, and I know the Warriors have struggled on the road. But when you have teams like the Golden State Warriors that are defending champions that have been there before and that they will figure it out, the time is ticking for the Suns. And I know injuries have hampered them, but they got to find a way to get to the foul line and get these wins going soon. And then that leaves me to like the Denver Nuggets game where I feel like that was actually their best outing of the season, or at least one of the best outings of the season. Just didn't fall their way there. And Gordon Dunk just took the life out of the stadium for the Suns late in that overtime. Landry Shaman had a great game with 7 threes and 31 points. I thought they played hard. DeAndre Ayton had 22 and 16. I thought that was like one of his better games of the season. I thought everybody since Devin Booker and left the game early in that contest, I thought everybody played their tails off. It just didn't fall their way. Nikola Jokic had 41, 15, and 15, scoring the most Christmas Day points, I believe, by a player ever, especially in the Nuggets history. And I thought it was just one of those games where they just the best player on the court just took over, and the ball bounced sometimes their way. And Aaron Gordon obviously had a great game with 28 and 13 of his own. So there's been times where I feel like the Suns had chances to win. There's also other times where they were outright outplayed and outcoached. There's some stuff to build on in this road trip, even though they were 1-5. But there's a lot of games I feel like were winnable that they should have won, and just the ball just didn't bounce their way. Which leaves me to the next topic, which is Devin Booker. And my goodness, do the Suns need him back so badly? I mean, to let me just say it to you kindly. I mean, with Devin Booker on the floor, the Suns' winning percentage is over 600. With him off the floor, they're about 222. They were 2-8 with him out of the lineup, and that's not even counting the 2 games that he left, which was the Nuggets game that they lost, and then another game against the Pelicans, where they lost 124-117. That was the game where Zion Williamson had that dunk that went viral, and they they need their all star player back. And I know he's going to be back in 2 to 3 weeks, but the Suns have been really really struggling in terms of trying to get the right scoring options out there. The last two games that they played, the Suns haven't even scored over 90 points in those games. They I think they averaged actually 85 and a half, if I'm not mistaken, in those games, while shooting 30% from three and 37% from the floor. So it's been tough sledding. I know one of those teams was the Knicks, and over the last month, their defensive rating is the best in the league at like 107, which is absurd in today's NBA with all the scoring that's going on. But the Suns really desperately need their all-star player back, and in the worst way possible, as he's been averaging 27, shooting 37% from the three-point line. And honestly, this can make the argument that he should be in the MVP conversation. I mean, I know the numbers aren't like where Luka Doncic's numbers are and how much value he brings to the Mavericks. I think Luka is obviously the leading candidate for MVP right now, in my opinion. But I think Devin Booker, if anything, is showing how valuable he is to the Suns, and how much they were doing when he was on the floor as opposed to when they're off the floor. And just to put it into perspective, going back December 7th, 2022, just a month ago, the Suns, before they got blown out by the Celtics, were sitting at the first seed in the West. Shoot, even going back to December 5th, going against the Mavericks, they were first in the West. They got blown out in that game too. But now, and they're sitting at 16-8. Now they're sitting at 20-19, and they're sitting at eighth in the Western Conference with the Warriors right there with them, also at 20-19. And Devin Booker missed 10 of those games and was out for majority of two of the other games, which means he was out for like solid 12 games. And it's been tough. And you're already without Cam Johnson, who's expected to return sometime next month with a right torn meniscus. You're already missing 3-point shooting with that. That can only add to this team. But also with them being with players being in and out of the lineup. I mean, Cameron Payne just left yesterday's game again with his right foot soreness, so he's been out. In the when he's been in the starting lineup, he's been averaging over 20 a game, giving tempo. But it's just been one of those stretches where health is at an all-time high, and they really need to be healthy during the stretch run. They need to just continue to find ways to just stay afloat. And I know that's easier said than done, but hopefully going back to this home stretch can do wonders for them. I know they're about to play the Heat this upcoming Friday, and they have the Cavs again on Sunday. They're 14-5 at home. Let's see if they can build a better outing as opposed to the last couple times. But I know it's been tough as a Phoenix Suns fan, and I know during the well after I post this on YouTube, I know that if there's one thing that anybody wants to do is just comment how you're feeling. Honestly, just comment about how you guys think the Sun season has gone, and heck, comment what trade rumors and trades you would make for this upcoming season before the trade deadline. Because I know that's one thing that the Suns, especially with the Jay Crowder news going around, is that they've needed to find ways to find other scoring options. I know today I just wrote an article and a piece, and check that out on burncitysports.com, where there is an article about Bojan Bogdanovic from the Detroit Pistons being available up for trade. And he is something that I feel like that can be a great asset for the Suns. I've been at nauseum for wanting Kyle Kuzma to join the Suns. I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to happen. I honestly don't believe that, but I think Bojan Bogdanovic can provide something that the Suns really desperately need, and that's stretch four. I feel like Torrey Craig has filled that role, and I feel like he's done similar things to what Jay Crowder has done over the last couple years, even last year. So I think he's exceeded expectations. And with Cam Johnson out, I think that Bojan Bogdanovic would be a great asset to this team. He's averaging 21 points per game on 42% from 3-point range. I think he's having an all-time, or not an all-time season, but just a really great season for the Detroit Pistons. And I feel like if you were to make a trade like that, and obviously somebody in the starting lineup would have to go on the bench, and I would probably think that Cam Johnson would probably just go back to the bench. And I think that would be great for the Suns. I mean, I can just imagine the lineup of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Bojan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Ayton, with Cam Johnson being your sixth man, with Cameron Payne coming off right next to you, with Landry Shamet, with Torrey Craig, and that's depending on what trades are made with that, who knows who's going to be a part of that. But I think it could bode well for the Suns moving down the stretch. But that's a pipe dream. Who knows if that will happen? But one thing's for sure is that DeAndre Ayton, for sure, not DeAndre Ayton, excuse me, Jay Crowder trade deserves, that needs to be kind of pushed a little more. I know the Suns are doing working day and night trying to get that done, but I know that that's something that needs to be addressed as soon as possible, especially with the trade deadline happening coming up February 9th, which is in a month. It's something that needs to be started now, and I know they're waiting for the right piece. I know finances can be tricky during the trade deadline, but hopefully that's something that gets resolved quick, fast, and in a hurry. Um, but with that being said, I mean, I hope that'll do it for like the Miller Sports Podcast episode 3. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I expect the Suns to put forth a better effort than during their home stretch. I know they play the Heat. I don't know, and I don't believe wholeheartedly that they'll win. I think they'll shoot the ball well. I think they'll play great defense. I just think they're just a little short-handed with firepower in terms of just start and just in terms of just scoring outputs. I think Chris Paul playing 40 minutes was huge. I think that you're probably going to be without Cameron Payne for this upcoming game. I think it's going to be tough for the Suns to try to get a win on Friday, but I know they're going to do whatever they can to do it. But let's see if they can get back in the win column because they desperately need it come this home stretch. But that'll do it for this third episode of the Most Sports Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button on BurnCitySports.com and tune in for the next episode, as I'll talk about upcoming trade rumors, the last couple games between the Heat and the Cavs, and what to look forward ahead with injury updates and with Cam Johnson and Devin Booker. And until then, reporting from Phoenix, Arizona, I'm Franklin Miller from Burn City Sports, excuse me. And you guys have a great, wonderful day. Tune in next time.